Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, where I get a chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. This broadcast is sponsored by Reveal-Brainspace, the industry's leading AI eDiscovery platform. Don't forget to subscribe to watch me, George Socha, weekly with leaders in eDiscovery. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socha, Senior Vice President of Brand Awareness at Reveal. Each week, I host eDiscovery Leaders Live, where I get the chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. This week, we are broadcasting live from Croke Park in Dublin, where we are at Ireland's Legal Tech Conference 2022. Past episodes are available on the Reveal website. Go to revealdata.com, select resources, then select eDiscovery Leaders Live. My guest for this, the second of our 3 episodes today, is Jeff Shapiro. Jeff is a director at EY, and he is joining us from London. So we'll just manage these things however we do. Jeff, glad to have you join us.
Thanks so much, George. It's lovely to be here virtually with you today. Looks like it's a very busy conference. I see some of your colleagues in the background networking, as they should be. And it's lovely that we can be here, there, or anywhere these days. So lovely to be here with you. Thanks.
Glad to have you. And we are at the tail end of the lunch break here. I'd say there are probably about 150 people here. In a few minutes, they are supposed to head back inside. It will quiet down and make it a little easier for us. But I'd like you to start, Jeff, by giving us a little overview about who you are and how you fit into this world of eDiscovery.
Yeah. Again, thanks, George. So I got into eDiscovery with a legal background. I'm licensed in Virginia. And when I graduated law school over a decade ago, when I was at my firm in Virginia, I started working on a Bernie Madoff feeder fund case. So as my grandfather told me, he may have ruined his pension, but he got me a job. So that's my foray into eDiscovery, because of course we needed to use eDiscovery technology to help out with the discovery in the litigation. That took me abroad to Spain and Brussels and London. And while abroad, I made connections with the eDiscovery provider. They recognized that I knew the difference between a left and a right mouse click and said, "You must know technology." And a decade later, here I am.
And now, a decade later at EY, what's your job? What is your role?
Yeah. So I've had many different roles while living in London. I'm coming up on my 3-year anniversary at EY in forensics. I'm a director primarily specializing in financial services, looking after some of our very large banking capital market clients, and running a team that looks after discovery, data analytics, cyber incident response, and adjacent areas like information governance and data disposition. So it's really interesting because I had never worked at the Big Four before joining EY. Having access to such diverse service lines and understanding how organizations work, not just in forensic-driven events, but as part of their business as usual, has really been eye-opening. And I think the most exciting thing, George, is the fact that we're now looking at using forensic processes, procedures, people, and technology outside of forensic-driven events.
So, taking that technology into areas outside of those events, what does that look like? Those capabilities, how are you deploying these?
Yeah, well, a good example of that would be information requests. You might have an information request tied to an investment. For instance, in the UK, there's the National Security Investment Act. You might have an information request in relation to a merger and acquisition, or in relation to whether or not you've properly divested of sanctioned entities. All of those things require looking at your data, understanding where it resides, understanding what's relevant to the regulator or to the underlying matter, and then being able to properly report on that. The really interesting thing is that in those information requests, they tend to lean more on the structured data than on the unstructured data. So really having that tight collaboration between structured data analysts and your traditional discovery unstructured consultants has been key in providing these services.
At one level that sounds simple, another complicated. How do you make that work between those two potentially very different worlds?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because the term structured data and unstructured data, I don't really think outside of legal technology or technical circles, people were saying or using those terms a few years ago. It's been great because now everyone has landed on, we understand what unstructured data is. That's all of your emails and chat communications and audio video. We understand what the structured data is, which could be core banking systems, financial systems, CRM, DMS. What we're now finally starting to see is individuals, entities, and law firms really understand the value that they could derive from those different data sources. And because technology has improved so much, you're able to get access to those data sources more easily and more quickly today than you would have several years ago. So in fact, George, it's becoming easier to work within these two different worlds and merge them together. And that's really where the benefits are derived from.
What does the merger of the two look like? Right, are you able to have all data in one platform? Do you have two different platforms that communicate with each other? Or is the individual the piece that ties those two parts together?
Yeah, well, the short answer is a little bit of all of the above. The ideal situation is that you would have a centralized platform that via APIs can hook into structured data sources, could communicate with your unstructured data sources, and then merge them together to tell the single source of truth about what happened when and what you need to know. So any organizations who have those single repositories really have a leg up versus having to communicate with one system over here, another over there, perhaps one there, and then have to tie them all together with cross references and whatnot. That's the more traditional method, and it certainly works, and organizations have gotten very good at doing that, but it can add inefficiency and cost to the process.
As I think of the challenges we face dealing with unstructured data, some of the ways we try to address that is through deduplication, through email threading, through using concept analysis against data chunks large and small, predictive analytics where people look at a document and try to have the system suggest if I like this document, I like that. I think of structured data. I think more things like SQL, sometimes very complex SQL queries, and putting Power BI over data sources or other tools like that. I don't tend to think of one platform that bridges all of those capabilities. Is that there? Are you as an organization that middleware? How does that work?
Sure. So one of the platforms that we have at EY is called EY Virtual. It's our microservices platform that we've developed in concert with off of the back of Microsoft technology. So it lives in our private Azure cloud. And that is able to grab at all of these different data sources, provide visualizations on top of them. You're able to link a chat message to, let's say, where a trade occurred, or where a mortgage was issued, or where a notice was filed. And it really helps in a lot of investigations and litigation, but also on the compliance side or on the transformation side. A good example would be if you're an organization who deals a lot with home mortgages, and you need to track, uh, did you send proper notices out to the owner of the property? Has the owner recorded the payment? Has there been any complaints filed to the customer service hotline? All of those things are data sources that traditionally would live in different areas. By bringing them all together, again, you're able to drive improvement in the organization and really understand what happened when and with whom.
So you, as your organization, provide the middleware to attach those different pieces together. Am I understanding correctly there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so a great example would be we could use Reveal for all of the unstructured data. One of our clients might have an E3 or E5 license with Microsoft, and that's where a whole bunch of their corporate data resides. And we're able to examine some things within the E3, E5 environment. But of course, they'll have data that resides outside of that. It could be legacy data. It could be messaging and chat data. So we bring that in to the Reveal platform. And then they might have, again, structured data that we would bring in and merge into EY Virtual, having them all communicate and speak together. So it's really, yes, it is middleware, but it's understanding the underlying technologies and how they can communicate with each other and how you can create those links.
The world of e-discovery has long focused primarily on the unstructured data side of things. You're talking here about what can be done with structured data. How does that differ? What are you seeing as challenges, and what are you seeing as opportunities?
Sure. So I think with structured data, there's two principal challenges. One is on the technical side, and one is on the subject matter side. So let me start with the subject matter. You need folks who understand what they're trying to access and why and for what underlying purpose. So you wouldn't want people who have never dealt with a core banking system just digging around in it and trying to make sense of what's happening. You want people who understand core banking systems and then applying their technical knowledge to that structured data source in order to derive the insights that the investigators, lawyers, experts, whomever would be looking for. So that's on the subject matter side. On the technical side, you then need the folks who understand and have the technical skills in order to access the structured data system, get it into a malleable format and into an analyzable format, right? So you mentioned SQL or Python or Power BI. There could be a whole host of different technologies and computing languages applied to the structured data in order for you to be able to pinpoint the needle in the haystack or to find where there's a peak or a valley in patterns. All of those things are incredibly important. And George, just
go ahead. Yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
just picking up, the trend that I have observed is that more clients and more law firms are now understanding the value that the structured data can hold. And I think that's really key. For too long, you would have an investigation where you might collect data from 40 or 50 custodians, and that data would be from their mailboxes, and people would ignore their chat messaging. And then we had this, revolution 5 or so years ago where people started understanding, oh, we need to look at the chat messaging. How do we access it? How do we make it reviewable? right? And now we're at a standpoint where we have a pretty good methodology for reviewing different forms of chat message. We are still a little bit in the Wild West of structured data, but you have really, really smart people who have been working in structured data for a decade plus, right, and are now primed and poised to say, wow, look what you can actually get from this. And it's not so hard to get access to it anymore. So let's combine it so you can have that full story. I think that's what's really so exciting.
Now, if you've got these people who have been working in the wilderness for 10 years, what happened to draw other people's attention to the value and the possibility of those data sources?
Yeah, well, I would look at in recent history the Libor or FX investigations. In those investigations, the key to figuring out, I've said this before, but what happened when and with whom, was looking at the structured data so you understood the rate was pegged at this time on this date to this level in the market, and the next day it was pegged here in the market. And you said, well, why was there such a precipitous drop? And then you would take that information and look into the unstructured data, and you would see what was happening in the chat rooms and who was communicating with whom. You would look at email messages and you would see things that said, let's take this offline. So there was both a absence of unstructured data communications as well as some unstructured communications that would indicate maybe what was happening. But what wasn't lying and what wasn't going offline was the actual market activity and the actual trades that were occurring and the actual movement in rates. And that was all the structured data. So really, a lot of the banks very quickly understood the value of structured data, and the regulators understood the value of structured data for those financial service investigations. And I think now more folks are starting to understand it as well.
Switching gears a little bit, you have a panel of your own coming up later this week. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. It's a very busy week in London. There is the New York State Bar Association International Sections Conference, which is occurring in London tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. This conference originally was supposed to be held in 2020, but was delayed for 2 years due to COVID. So here we are now in 2022, really exciting. The panel that I'm speaking on is on Thursday afternoon, taking place at Goodenough College in central London. Really interesting, diverse panelists. We have Emily Wiley-Ballard from RPC and Melina Estafio from Eversheds, Kofi Mills from Candy, and others. It's really Alex Scott from Clifford Chance as well. So what we've tried to do is combine different size law firms, both within the UK as well as globally. And the panel is going to be on driving more successful outcomes in litigation and investigation through the use of legal technology. And we're primarily going to look at legal technology in two spheres. The first is the legal technology that we've been discussing, looking in and analyzing the structured and unstructured data. The second part of the legal technology will be how are we collaborating, communicating, and project managing when we are in a big investigation or litigation? How are we ensuring that the lawyers and consultants and in-house counsel and investigators are all communicating correctly and efficiently and defensively? So it should be a really interesting conversation, and I can't wait after 2 years to finally see everyone in person.
Is there any aspect of the discussion you are most looking forward to?
A big part of the conversation is going to be how do you drive adoption of innovative technologies? And George, I know this is something that you're quite familiar with. What is so exciting to me is that we have the range of panelists go from partner at law firm to forensic co-head of global law firm to e-discovery manager of more regional law firm. And what that's going to really allow us to see is what are the different tactics that you need to take depending upon your organization size and makeup in order to reach those successful changes.
You've probably had a prep call or two. Do you have any idea of what sort of tactics people are going to talk about? Or for that matter, what have you seen be successful?
Yeah, some of the things that we've discussed during our prep calls really come down to the people that you work with and are looking to collaborate with. So it's less about the technology and more about the people. And if you can understand what your partners and associates, what your investigators and consultants are trying to achieve, then it's much easier to show how the technology can help them achieve that goal or those outcomes. Rather than saying, here's my great shiny piece of tech, look at all of the things it does, but not understanding how you're meant to tailor it to the people that you're working with.
Well, good luck on that panel. Looking back over your time at EY, or if you will, earlier than that, of the various things you've been involved in, what are you most proud of?
It's a really good question. The thing that I'm most proud of would be the relationships that I've formed and kept over my 10 years in London, as well as the careers I've been able to help develop. I'm at a standpoint now where I've been doing e-discovery and been in that field for 12 and a half, 13 years. And so I'm now helping another generation with all of the experience that I have that really help bring them up and professionalize them and help them understand that we sit within a legal and regulatory ecosystem. We're not just button pushers. We're not just technologists. We are legal technologists. And there is a certain responsibility that comes with that to ensure that the people that we're helping, when they're in complicated disputes or investigations, are really getting the service that they need. And I couldn't be prouder of some of the graduates and some of the associates that I've seen advance in their careers. And I just think it's wonderful. It's as you know, being at the conference right now, despite you traveling across the ocean, you're seeing familiar faces. And I think everyone understands within legal technology that it's a very tight-knit community. And what you give out is hopefully something positive, and that will return positive vibes to you. I know it's a little cheesy, but that's truly what I believe.
You know, there's great value in cheesiness sometimes. I mean, well, we have to have higher goals to aspire to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. Especially when you're in the trenches. It's a disclosure Friday. A request came in after 6 p.m. and you have to turn something around the next morning.
Right.
You need to know that you've got some good people at your side to rely upon.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jeff. Jeff Shapiro is a director at EY in London. I am George Socha. This has been eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. Jeff, thank you so much.
Thanks, George. Have a great afternoon.
You too.